Texas Congressman Mac Thornberry chairs the House Armed Services Committee. Welcome, Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, I want to refer to a piece that you wrote outlining just how much trouble that we're in. You said the Marine Corps is harvesting spare parts from museums to keep planes flying over Iraq. The Chief of Staff of the Army has testified that the readiness of the Army is not at a level that is appropriate for what the American people would expect to defend them. How do we turn it around?
Well, I think it's important for people to know two things have happened during the Obama years. The world has grown more dangerous, and our own military has grown smaller and weaker, and we have to turn it around. Part of the way we turn it around is to reform the Pentagon, and we've been working to buy weapons smarter, to reduce bureaucracy and streamline decision making. But the only way that we can add soldiers to the Army, put more ships in the Navy, replace old airplanes with new airplanes is to spend more money. And so I'm very encouraged. The Trump administration says they're going to come to us with a supplemental spending request for defense in the first 100 days. And then what I've tried to do in the article on foxnews.com is to lay out next year's budget and how we can start to really make up some of this ground that we've lost.
Well, and our Fox viewers will be very familiar with this concept of sequestration that hit the military, setting these cutting baseline figures in order to get things funded. And you point out in this piece as well that from 2010 to 2014, the military spending was actually cut 21%, and the threats didn't go down 21% during that time. But when you talk about asking for more money, I want to play something from your colleague over in the Senate. This is Senator Lindsey Graham talking about how we figure out where we're going to spend the money to its best advantage.
I will build up the military because we're in danger, but I will not do it at the expense of the CIA, the FBI, and the State Department's budget. If you take soft power off the table, then you have two options left. Use military power exclusively or retreat. I cannot stress to you how important it is that we have more tools in the toolbox than just military power and retreat.
Okay, so we're $20 trillion in debt nearly. The military needs funding, but everybody needs funding for something. How in the world do you do this? You talked about cutting acquisition and things in graft and waste at the Pentagon. Can you do it in a way, though, that makes a significant enough difference that you can get the funding you need without hurting some of these other interests that Senator Graham talks about?
Well, I think Lindsey is right when he talks about security is important across the board. Whether that's Homeland Security, the FBI, or the intelligence community. But when I say that the military budget was cut 21% from 2010 to 2014, that includes the intelligence community. They were cut too. And so part of what we have to do is think, why do we have a federal government? I think the first job of the federal government is to defend the country. And most people don't realize that if you add all the military intelligence funding together, it's still only 16% of the federal budget. So we need to make sure we spend that money smarter, absolutely. But there is no substitute for building ships, replacing old airplanes, putting more people in the Army, because that's the first job of the federal government, and that's what we've got to focus on.
You mentioned your estimate is that we need $640 billion for funding next year, but you also say that Congress needs to pass immediately funding for fiscal year 2017 national defense. What is the holdup? Why has that not happened?
Because Congress and the Obama administration didn't finish their work. And so even right now, in the year we're in, we're on this temporary spending bill that means that money is not spent efficiently. So we need to finish this year's work, take the requests coming from the Trump administration on how to start to turn things around, but then put our real effort into next year's funding. And we've been working on that for about a year, not just to pick a number out of the air, but look specifically at where we need more money. For example, we are short of some critical munitions. We need to fund those areas. And that's the details of that is what I laid out in my foxnews.com editorial.
What is your sense of how the military community is feeling about a President Trump and how he will impact their day-to-day reality of how they operate on issues like this?
Yeah, I think they're hopeful. they're hopeful that they will not be a political pawn like they have been for the last 8 years. Remember that President Obama's position was he wouldn't spend another dime on the military unless we spent an equal amount for non-military domestic spending. So I think the military is looking forward to standing on their own, looking at military needs, security needs on their own. And the rest of the story is, I think they're looking forward to getting back to that fundamental truth that we've lost recently, which is the best way to keep the peace, the best way to keep Americans safe is for a strong United States military.
Chairman, the Republicans now control both houses of Congress. You got a president in the White House. How much pressure is there on you to get things like this moving, to get them done? I mean, on some of these votes, especially over in the Senate, where you need 60 to move certain things, you don't have everything you need, but do you worry the American people will point the finger at you if some of this does not get done, especially in these first 2 years with the Houses and White House?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's urgent. In other words, as you pointed out, the world is not getting any safer. We see what Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, we see the cyber attacks. Terrorism is multiplying around to more countries than before. So we don't have the luxury of sitting around, twiddling our thumbs and saying, okay, we'll fix the military someday, but just not now. We need to take action now for the military, the intelligence community, the FBI, absolutely, because they help keep us safe at home. The focus has to be keeping Americans safe, and we do that by being strong. We've cut too much over the Obama years. We've got to turn it around now.
All right, we will watch the Capitol Hill battle over that funding as you move forward. Chairman Mac Thornberry, thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.